In this last video, we are going to add some navigation to our page. So let's go back to our sample page. And again, I'm going to preview this in the browser. And the navigation consists of these buttons here on the side. It allows me to progress through. So let's set this up with our project. I'm going to come back to Muse. I'm going to choose the home page that we're working with. And I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top. To navigate through this page, we are going to need to create anchors. And we create anchors for our page using this anchor icon right here. I'm just going to click that, and you can see I get an anchor gun. I want to place these anchors right at our section transitions. For this anchor at the top of the page, I'm going to place this right on the edge of our web page and right near the top of the browser. Now when I click this, I'm going to rename this just first_section and say OK. Now I do want to draw your attention to one thing. I should actually be able to see the name of this. The reason I can't is because I've placed that anchor on our clouds layer here, and that clouds layer is actually behind our header graphics up here. I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to drag this green dot that's on the clouds layer onto my layer 4. And you can see now it says first section. I want to be able to see these anchors as I put them down. Let's create our next anchor for the second section. I'm just going to again place that right there. I'm going to type in second section, say OK, scroll down to our third section. Again, I'm going to place another anchor right at that transition. Third section. I'm putting an underscore in between these words because anchors cannot have spaces in their names. Say OK. Finally, I'm going to place the final anchor right here, and I'm going to call it fourth section. Now that I have my anchors positioned, I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and I'm going to create the 4 buttons that will allow me to navigate this site. In the sample, you saw that those buttons were round circles. But you may notice that there actually isn't a circle tool in our toolbox over here. What we're going to do is we're going to start with a rectangle. I'm just going to click and drag out a rectangle, and I'm going to put it just on the edge of our website here. And I want to make this roughly 25 by 25. Going to come over to my height field over here, and I'm just going to type in 25. Currently, it has no fill and no stroke. I'm going to click on the fill dropdown, and I'm going to choose 50% gray for the color. Well, we have a rectangle for our button, but I want to make this a circle. I'm going to reselect this. To turn this square into a circle, I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to click on each of these 4 corners, and that will make our circle round. Actually, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so I can see this a bit better. You can see that each of these circles is currently set to a value of 10 pixels. If I increase that, though, you can see that eventually I can make that a perfect circle. 13 seems to be the number. I'm going to hit Command -sign on my keyboard to zoom out. And I'm going to duplicate this circle 3 more times by holding down the Option button, clicking and dragging. You can see my smart guides give me an alignment. That looks good. I'm going to drag out another version and 1 more. There we go. And -sign again a few times. So now what I need to do is I need to link each one of these buttons with our anchor. I'm going to choose the very first button here. And you can see I have a little drop down here called hyperlinks. And if I click on this drop down, you can see that the sections that I just created are here. For the top button, I'm going to make that our first section. And of course, the next button will be our second section, third section, and fourth section. Now, currently, if we were to test this in the browser and we were to scroll, these buttons would scroll up like the balloon would. But I don't want that to be the case. In fact, I want these to be fixed here on the right-hand side of the browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, select all of them, and I'm going to pin them to the upper right of the browser. And I can do that by coming over to here where it says pin, and this little bounding box allows me to check the upper right, and that will pin these buttons to the upper right of the browser. Now I need to do one more thing before I test this in the browser. I'm going to come over to my layers panel, and my guides are still showing. I want to turn those guides off at this point. I no longer need them. Okay, let's come to the File drop-down menu and preview this page in a browser. Okay, I'm going to click on this button, and there we go. We are now navigating through our page. And of course, I can go back up. Our navigation is working perfectly. There's just one last thing that I want to do. There is a link that I want to create here if someone wants to find out more information. The link is actually just to the Wikipedia page about the history of ballooning. Let's first of all get that URL by opening up a new browser window. And here is our URL. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to come back to our Muse site, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I just want to use my text tool to highlight the text that I want to have as a link. With that selected, I can again come back over here to my hyperlinks dropdown, and in this top field here where you see the blinking cursor, I'm just going to hit Command V to paste our URL for the Wikipedia page about the history of ballooning. I'm going to hit return on my keyboard to accept that, and there we go. The only problem is, if I zoom in, you can see we have some rather unpleasant styling. Let's change this. To do so, I'm going to again use my text tool to highlight this text, and I'm going to come to the File drop-down menu and select Site Properties. The Site Properties is where we made the changes to the size and the columns. But if I click on this middle button here, Content, you can see that we are able to style our different states. The normal is set to this blue, but I'm going to set that to 50% gray. That's our normal state. That's what our button looks like when nothing's happening to it. Our hover state is what it looks like when someone hovers their cursor over top of it. I'm going to change that to black. Visited, I'm going to change that back to gray, and active, I'm going to make that 50% gray as well. The only other change that I want to make is the underlining. Currently, everything is underlined. Typically, that's what you see with links in websites. But in fact, I prefer to keep all those not underlined. So I'm going to uncheck each one of those, and I'm going to say OK. Now you can see that our link is gray. Let's check this out in the browser. File drop-down, preview page in browser. I'm going to scroll down, and now you can see that our text is gray. When I hover over top, it changes to black, and when I click on it, it brings me to the Wikipedia page about ballooning. Well, there you go. We have completed our web page in Muse. I hope you've enjoyed this series.